Welcome to the Safe Harbor Shining the Light podcast, where we will shine the light on community issues such as substance use disorder, poverty, homelessness, and the stigma that prevents many from getting the help that they need. Thank you for joining us, and I hope you enjoy this episode.
Welcome to Safe Harbor Shining the Light podcast. I'm Sarah Blanton, Director of Development for Safe Harbor of NC. And with me today is Chasta Cole. Chasta is Safe Harbor's volunteer and events coordinator. And also she's a very proud alumni of our Safe Harbor programs. And so welcome, Chasta Cole.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, well, I'm so excited that you're here as a guest on our podcast today. And so, Chasta, you came through the program in 2016? 2017. That's
yes.
Right.
Yes.
That's right. And so, if you don't mind, just give a little intro about how you found out about Safe Harbor, and just say a little bit about what programs you participated in and just kind of what's going on now in your life.
Okay, so in 2016, I was in a mental institution for a couple months. There, I came to realize that I needed help. My aunt connected me with an application. I filled it out, and then in January of 2017, I returned home to find you on maternity leave and not accepting anyone into Whole Woman. So I then went to the day program for a couple months, and then in March of 2017, you graciously entered me into the program. From there, I did the whole year, transitioned to Greenleaf in 2018, and then left Greenleaf on Good Friday of 2019. I then moved on to get married and had another kid, reconnected with my children, did 5 years as a career in law, and now God has led me to be on staff at Safe Harbor and return to the place that gave me life.
Well, that is so awesome. I'm so very excited, and it's been an honor and privilege to just have a piece and play a role in your journey, and I'm just so excited to have you on staff, and you're making a tremendous impact. And so, but Chasta, this podcast, it seeks to aim to really talk about the social issues that really have a lot of stigmatizing factors around them, whether it's a lack of knowledge because people just don't understand the issues, and so therefore the stigma is formed, but also it's just, it's very challenging for people to talk about issues that they're experiencing, for one, but it's even more challenging to ask for help for these issues. And so that's what this episode we're going to focus on, about why it is so challenging to ask for help and just some of the stigmatizing factors around that. So something that I know about you is that you have a degree in psychology.
Yes, I do.
And so you have both a personal perspective in regards to experiencing ups and downs with mental health, and you have a working understanding of that from a personal place, but also from a professional setting. You have worked in the field, and so you have witnessed other journeys through that. And so, Chasta, why do you feel like it's so challenging for people to pick up the phone, make that first step, and just saying, hey, something's off, I really need help?
Well, pride comes into factor, and denial. And I know personally for me, I had one vision of what an addict was, and that was my mother. That was the only vision, and really, I guess, what she did, how she acted, that was what was told to me. That's an addict. That's not normal behavior. To kind of calm the guilt that a kid would feel, But with that in my brain, I took that as if I wasn't doing these things, then I didn't have a problem. I went to school, I got a degree, I had a job in medicated assistance at a methadone clinic. Like, I was showing up for my kid, I was doing these things until I wasn't. And having that pride and that denial that, I wasn't, not making dinners, or I wasn't showing up to school, or I was being present and active, kind of kept me in that cycle of there's nothing wrong with me. I'm okay. I've got it together, until I didn't. And a lot of people struggle with that and have that denial or that pride piece that gets them to what we call a rock bottom. And even in that rock bottom, you then have the guilt that is compiled on the pride and the denial that then it's so hard to finally admit, I do need help. And even for me, when I got to that point of I need help, it was still, the fear of the unknown. Like, I was comfortable in this destruction that I have made for myself, that anything different was kind of, or it was scary. And I was still kind of hesitant to, is this even gonna work? Am I even worth this help anymore?
Yeah. Can you tell us a little more about the comfort? I think that's something that people don't consider. Say a little more about that comfortable place of chaos that you're talking about.
So, and I know that sounds like an oxymoron, right? But it is. I mean, when you've lived in a lifestyle of homelessness or couch surfing or panhandling, or even having to do some unsavory things,
right?
Like, there's that sort of routine. We get in a routine. I know what to expect of those things. I know what's going to happen. I know how to take care of myself in those situations. I've developed these hardened skills to help me live in that lifestyle. And anything out of that is like, I'm going to the moon kind of thing. It's unworldly. It's chaotic to me. A normal, what is normal? What does that even mean? To hold a job down, to pay your bills. What does that mean? That's all scary because I've lived in this chaos, which has become my reality and my comfortability because I was used to it. I knew how to navigate. It's kind of like when you're institutionalized. The recidivism rate is high because they find their path in either mental institutions or jails. Like, how to work that system that you have grown so accustomed to. So anything outside of that is like a whole new world that you need to then develop new skills. Right.
And for you in your particular journey, I recall that you started your programming at Safe Harbor. You were 25? 24, 25 years old?
Yes, something like that.
And, if you think about that, technically our brains don't even develop fully until we're around that age. So I am sure. How old were you when you first tried
9.
any drugs? 9 years old. So from 9 years old to 25 years old of age, that's... you have adapted to, you are accustomed to, like you said, you understand, even though it is chaos, you understand how to navigate it.
Yeah, it was my chaos.
It was your chaos. And so I could imagine being the age of 25 and having to walk into a situation where, one, it's a year-long program, and two, you don't know anybody. And 3, you're pretty much having to change everything about your life.
Yes, and it was all women.
And it's all... Yes, girl. It's all women.
Women, communal living.
Yes, it is communal living. And I think even though, like I can walk through our program, the facility is beautiful. I know the staff are great. I know the curriculum's great. It's a great experience. But I imagine that it is just terrifying. It would be terrifying for someone to come in. And although this environment is so awesome, and I believe that women experience peace and freedom, after a few days when they get in, and I know they feel loved, but you had said something about, like, the thought, there's a desire to have a different kind of life, but I imagine that some people just are not sure that that's even possible for them.
Yeah.
1, because they've never really experienced. 2, like you said, because of the guilt that they
Yes.
feel they don't feel worthy.
I mean, and that's really what it was for me. And I grew up in church. My aunt took me to every Sunday school, every Bible class, every Awana church camp. Like through my childhood, I was enthralled in it. You know, you went to church Wednesday, you went to church Sunday, you
Right.
went to church Sunday night. Like it was boom, boom, boom. And some of that, you know, of my own accord kind of played into that guilt, because it was like I didn't understand what true forgiveness of God was. I didn't understand who God really was and who I really was in God. Because to me, he was the pointing the finger, like, how could you do this? You knew better. You know, and that's how I felt like everyone was going to receive me. And it wasn't like that. I mean, I can remember, like, I hadn't spoken to my aunt in months. And when I had my realization and I finally got the strength up to call her, she was just overjoyed. You know, it's kind of like the prodigal son story. Like, there was no negativities, no nothing. It was just, I'm so happy you're alive, because I have been calling police to try and find your body, because we haven't heard from you. And contacting everyone and anyone she could think of from my last known place of where I was at. And that just kind of gave me another gumption to keep going. You know, that unconditional love, that it wasn't, she had her thoughts about it. And it wasn't like I was going to get off the hook for everything.
Yeah.
But in that moment, she welcomed me with open arms. And then going through Whole Woman, and there's a class in there that beautiful Corey and Lori teach, and it learns about who God is and who he actually, you know, what the forgiveness is and what the truth of God is. And that, understanding that kind of like shined a whole, no pun intended, shined a whole light
Yes.
on the situation. Because, you know, even if you grow up in church, you don't fully grasp it,
Right.
you know,
Yeah.
or to some degree.
Oh, yeah, and our brains aren't. I mean, we're developing at such a young age, and seeds are definitely planted. They're definitely planted, but based on what's modeled before us through people, that also shapes our perception of who God is. You know, I think children, you know, no one can fully wrap their brains around, you know, an omnipresent, sovereign creator of the universe. Right? I mean, we can see humans in front of us.
Right.
And that's, you know, how we shape reality, you know, for ourselves. And so when it's inconsistent or there's trauma, it just skews it. It skews it. And so I have spoken with so many women that they desire the help, but they don't know where to start. And so much of that is that they, it's the self-loathing, even when you bring people in the picture that have had long-term recovery that could speak into their lives, it gives them hope, but there's still that period of ambivalence where they've got to lay some stuff down and accept and receive this love and this truth. And that's, I think people, even women that come through the Whole Woman program, there's quite a few months that go by where they're still
definitely.
very much in that place of, I'm learning these truths, I am learning skills, I'm developing relationships, but I still don't know if this is going to stick.
Yeah. It's like I'm putting my toe in the water.
I'm putting my toe in the water.
I'm testing it out.
I'm testing it out. And I think a lot of people kind of stay in that space. If it's a 30-day program, a 90-day program, I think they're still in that place of ambivalence, and they're weighing things out and they're contemplating. And that's why I appreciate programming that is long-term, but also you talk about moving on to our Greenleaf program, which is Safe Harbor's transitional program, and that was an additional layer of support where you still needed people to pour into you to speak that truth.
Right, but it allowed a little bit more freedom to understand what living life on my own again would be.
Yeah.
Once, because when you're in the Whole Woman, you're monitored 24/7. Your schedule is planned for you 24/7. Like, you're very busy with programming, with curriculum, with working at Resource, with going to the Y and yoga and all these things that are great. But then when you get out, if I was just set out on my own with no accountability, I don't know if I would be as successful as I am now. Whereas having that year of, okay, you're still an adult, you're still on your own, but you have a curfew, you have to check in here, you have to finance, you have to budget. Those things really help set up. Because when I went to, 28-day programs or little 2-week things, like, I had already had an exit plan scheduled, in my head. Like, it didn't give it enough time to really seep in for me to feel like this is something that I could do. Like, I can change. Like, I can be better. I want to be, but I can be.
Yeah. So we've mentioned in reference to reasons why it's so challenging for people to get to that place of readiness of help and even take the first step as one. Well, there's denial, a little bit of that sometimes when we're in it, especially people that are functioning, like you shared a little bit as you were working professional. You had this was kind of going on over here, but you were still able to function through it up to a certain point.
Yes.
In that progression, a model for a progression of addiction that's often used in prevention, substance use prevention, is called TRAP. And so the T stands for trial, like the first time someone would use a substance. And then the R stands for recreation, like you're using for fun. This is fun. I'm with people.
Party time.
Hey, party time.
Yeah.
The A is abuse/addiction. And the whole point with that is that people don't really know when they cross that line. It's a very fine line between the two. And then the P is pinned down. So there are a lot of functioning people that have addictions that aren't aware because the rock bottom hasn't happened, or maybe it's not even noticeable yet. But then they get to this pinned down place,
and it just
all goes.
Yeah.
And then
because I know for me it was in a matter of like 3 months, and I had lost everything.
Yeah.
Job, wrecked a car.
Yeah.
Didn't get to see my kid. Had, nowhere to go kind of thing in 3 months. Like, it went from using my whole life to bam.
It's a slow fade, but when you get to that P, it hits hard. And I think that people are at such a place of desolation spiritually, and hopelessness, that it just climbing out of that hole, I think
seems like...
and I think a stigma around that is you should be strong enough to get yourself out of the hole. Well, I think that's a lie.
Yeah.
I think that is a lie because addiction in particular isolates people. It starts out in a community because you're using with friends recreationally.
Yeah.
But then you start using by yourself. And then you alienate yourself from everybody because this is your thing, and everybody's going to tell you, we use this addictive logic, and then, but for whatever reason, sometimes society, sometimes family, and sometimes we impose this on our own selves that we should be strong enough to change. If we really wanted to stop using, we could just stop.
Yeah. Or if you loved me enough.
If you loved
or
me
loved
enough.
them enough. A lot of times with kids, it will be if you loved your kids enough, you'd quit. And even I, being a kid of an addict ridden, an abused mother, like, I thought, like, if you just loved me, then you'd stop, you know? But when I was then in those shoes, it's just not that simple. Because, like, I love my son, my biological one of them, like, more than anything. You know, I love all my kids, but at that time, like, he was my only one, and I did. But it was that pinned down state. Like, I did not know where else to go, and I could not do it on my own because I tried.
Yeah.
You know, and you'd get 2 days and go right back to it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I didn't have the tools to combat,
right.
you know, the stinking thinking or what I later learned in Safe Harbor as false beliefs that I kept telling myself from childhood, from trauma, all these things. You're not good enough, you're worthless, those sorts of things. And it just compiled onto that. And then you feel bad because you're like, well, I do love my kids. I do love my family. Do I not love them enough? You know, so it's like all this just keeps piling on.
Yeah. Yeah. It keeps people in the hole for sure. When did you feel yourself, like what kinds of things contributed to you getting out of that hole? Were there specific people that lent a hand? Was it just a light bulb moment that you had, a combination of those things?
Well, my aunt had always been one that had been there. And kind of her last, I don't like to use the term tough love because I think it gets skewed using that term. But for her and for me, what I needed was her to say, this isn't okay. We have hit our point.
Yeah.
I can't help you anymore. I hope you find, sorry, I'm going to get emotional.
You're fine.
I hope you find what you're looking for. And then she dropped me off at a homeless shelter and she drove away. And like, to me, that was kind of the point that got the ball rolling to me, realizing that something. Now, I went right back out and I used and I was with who I was with. And, you know, I think it's 5 detoxes in a mental institution later that when I was there, I was about to get out and I had made my exit plan because I was still in that whole, well, no one loves me, I'm worthless, I'm no good, they're better off without me. This is just what I meant to do. This is just going to be my life from now on. Might as well make the best of it kind of thing. And so I had made my exit strategy. I was on the phone talking to a person about, you know, how they could supply me with what I needed. And then, you know, through that conversation, a very toxic thing was said, and it just clicked. Like I had this kind of like, kind of moment, like I could feel it. And I came back to reality, and I was like, I said some explicit language back to their request, and I was like, no, I can't do this.
Yeah.
And so I went to the tech, and I had been there for like 4 months, so I had made real good friends with the techs, and I was like, I cannot go.
Yeah, so you told them, like...
I was like, I can't go
don't
back to
discharge
Wilmington.
me.
Like, don't let me go.
Okay.
And they had already had a bed at the Salvation Army there for me. Like, the bus was already ready to go the next morning. Like, my stuff was packed. And I was like, I can't go. They're like, well, you're already set. They're like, we can pray. And I was like, whatever.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Because
I ain't going.
That's just where I was. I was like, if that's what you need to do, great. You can pray. I'll stand here. And so they said a little prayer, and I went to bed. And when I got up the next morning, a tech came in, and she said, they gave your bed away last night. You're not leaving because you have nowhere to go now.
Oh, wow. That prayer worked, huh?
And so, yeah, I didn't see it then, but yeah, I mean, prayer is powerful, and it's throughout my whole story. And that kind of was like, okay, I need to make steps. And the next step was calling my aunt and then calling my son and his dad, who I haven't talked to in a while, and telling everyone, like, this is where I'm at. This is where my mindset's at. I'm ready, but I'm still hesitant.
Yeah.
Like, I'm still don't know if it's going to work. I'm
Yeah.
not going to make any promises.
Yeah.
But I realize that there's an issue, and I realize that I don't want to go back to that anymore. I can't, because if I would have went back, I would have died.
Yeah. I've had folks tell me, you've got to learn how to hate it. You got to hate the life.
Yeah.
Because for so long,
I mean, I loved it.
you glamorize it in a
Yeah.
sense, because that is for a certain point, you know, for a certain time span, it met a need
Yeah.
in your life, you know. And again, like, we're at that pinned down place before we even see it. Other people see it
Yeah.
before we do. But then it's like,
And
it sounds like you're just like, okay, well, my life is just going to be chaos. But then when this other person was like, gave you a glimpse, I guess, of the chaos that could potentially continue, you were like, I can't do this anymore.
Yeah.
It became more exhausting than
It just was like
fun. That's what
yeah.
we tell ourselves anyway.
Yeah. And I mean, even when you hate it, there's still that point when you use that the love comes back, you know, that you get something. It's like a relationship. It's a very
With the
toxic
substance, yeah.
relationship,
Yeah.
you know, and I had a history of toxic relationships. So that was just one of them. And it's like, I couldn't give
Yeah.
that up.
Yeah.
You know, it like defined who I was
Right.
in a way. And without it, I didn't know who I was.
Yeah.
Because I kind of morphed into that. I am an addict. This is all I'm ever going to be. Might as well just make the best of it. But there's more to me that I didn't know and that I didn't realize. And so I'm thankful for that situation and the time I spent there, and, you know, because it got me to that place. And everyone's rock bottom is different, but that's what mine had to be like,
Yeah.
nope, not gonna do that.
When, you know, what was it like coming through a process like a long-term residential setting? I mean, I feel free to speak. There's no perfect program, and there's up, downs, and all arounds with the process. But what were some of the highlights for you going through? Like, what were some? Because we talked about, like, when you first come in the door, even if it's a great environment, and even if it's a supportive environment, that addictive logic is still kicking in. So you're thinking about jumping out the window about every other minute for the first few days. I mean, it's a struggle. And so, but when did you find yourself kind of like, okay, this is different, but I can do this one day at a time? What was that like for you?
It was probably a couple months in. You know, I mean, I think it takes time to get adjusted to that. And my situation was different because we came in and it was kind of a full house, and then everyone graduated, and then it was just me and another girl. And it was us two for a very long time. And I was not the most pleasant of people. I was very, I mean, I wasn't mean, but I was guarded. I was very guarded. I was very hard-hearted. You know, I was willing till the cows come home. But I was still had that kind of, I don't know if this is really for me kind of thing. And then that other girl was so happy that I didn't understand. I thought something was wrong with her, you know, because she was way too happy for her own good. But it was like what we needed. And learning things about myself and actually being able to admit some things about myself was kind of that turning point when I really started feeling like the chains come off.
Wow.
Or the heart start, you know, softening a little bit. And actually reading Redeeming Love, because that was one of the required readings.
That's a good one.
It kind of, it really gave me hope. Like, yeah, this is something. Like, he can redeem, you know, and if he can redeem that, or if he can, you know, and I knew about the apostles because I grew up in church, and like Paul's one of my favorites, and I was like, if he can redeem Paul, then he got something for me, because he killed people Like he was a murderer. And
that's good. Very insightful of you. I mean, I think, God, he has used people that have gone through some struggles.
Because I'm I think he knows that, like we got the people that say they're like the doubting Thomas, but I'm a very analytical person. I've got to see things. I've got to test it, put my hands in it, weigh it out. And, he knows that about me. And we watched, what was that movie that we watched about that guy who was trying to prove that Jesus was not real, but
Case for Christ.
Yes. And we watched that in the house.
That's good.
And that just... that mixed with watching The Shack kind of all just put it into a visual perspective to me.
Yeah. God is present, and he sees you.
Yeah.
He sees us. He's not an aloof being, like you said, pointing his finger.
Right.
When are you going to get it together? And he's in the pit with us. We don't see it at the time.
Right.
But he's there.
Because then it's always the after, like I can look back and see where he was through every step of my journey. But in it, I was,
right.
Where are you? That crying out.
Sure.
Just desperation. But then when you get on the other side of it, you can see exactly where he was. Because he was in my fire, and he never left my fire. And then I remember one... I don't know if you would call it an activity or a whatever that we did with the girl with the teddy bear.
Because, the visual of
the visual
of
the girl with the teddy bear. So it was like, she had this tiny teddy bear that she was just gripping on. It was just the one thing that she couldn't let go, and she wasn't going to give it to Jesus. But what she didn't see is him having this like huge giganto bear that you would win at the fair.
Yeah.
It's like 5 feet tall and huge, that he's just waiting to give her if she would just release that one little thing.
I think release is a great word, instead of tough love, because I agree. I think there's some stigmatizing things and misconceptions around that, but I feel like your aunt had to release you.
Yeah.
That was a part of her journey, because it became toxic for her, I imagine.
It did.
And, I'm sure she had to come to a place. If you're a nurturer, I mean, it's our responsibility to guide and help our children, and she really has been like a mother figure for you. And so, oh goodness, that's hard to surrender our loved ones to the Lord. But I'm sure that she come to a place where like she just had to release you. But it's so interesting that the things... We are a big reason why people don't get help. What we are talking about right now is that we have this fear of admitting things about ourselves and looking at our own selves. Addiction is a wonderful mask for that.
Yeah.
It is. And when the mask is removed because you're not using anymore, and you're forced to look at yourself, everybody's scared of that. But you use the word releasing that and experiencing freedom. So much freedom in exchange for that. Talk a little bit about that. I mean, why do you feel it's significant to be introspective and look at yourself through, particularly in those early stages of recovery?
So, and I feel like in the way that we did it was in baby steps, which was good, because you can't just throw everything
welcome
up
it all,
and it was done in a very well way with the curriculum that was used. But in order to realize, because we hear that the abuse is just the symptom. It's just the symptom of the problem. So what is the underlying problem? Why was I using? Why was I running? Why was I doing these things? There's a centralized false belief or false truth that I have told myself, due to trauma, due to abandonment, due to whatever. No matter how hard my aunt stepped in and was that mother figure, that still stuck as you're unworthy, or you're to blame for everything. These things that kids just take on.
Yeah.
unbeknownst to whatever is going on around them. And then coming to the idea that I was actually capable of doing the things that I did, and hurting the people that I hurt. That was hard.
Sure.
But that was like a brilliant thing to see, because in a way that wasn't who I was. It was who I was under the influence.
Right.
It wasn't me. And it kind of brings me back to, me and my husband have been reading in Romans, I believe it's chapter 7, where Paul is talking about, when I sin, it's not me that's doing it. It's the sin in me that is causing me to sin. And I know that I am in the light. And so when it is not me doing it, it's the sin inside me doing it. Mm-hmm. And so it was like, not to put a Band-Aid on it or not to put an excuse on it, but to realize that in who I really am as a person, I am not that evil, vindictive, hurtful, liar, thief, cheater, whatever acronyms you want to put for that person that's with substance abuse and active addiction, doing the things. Yes, I did those. And admitting that to myself was a big thing.
Sure.
But being able to realize that that's not who I am, that's what I did, was like a game changer.
Sure.
Because we take all of our actions and we make them a part of our identity, instead of stepping aside and being like, I did this because of this, so I need to change this so I don't do that anymore, because that's not who I want to be.
Right. Wow. I'm so grateful for the opportunity to, again, just allow women to have the time to do that, because, like you said, it is a process. It's such a process for the individual, and just giving one another the grace and permission to have the process. Is so key to that, because you're just having to rewire and get rid of so much negative mental tape that's been in there for so long. And then there's accepting what's happened, forgiving yourself for that.
Yeah, which is a biggie.
And then replacing that negative mental tape with truth. It takes a long time.
It does take a long time. And the thing I like to, and it's funny because I didn't really like it at the beginning, because I was hard-hearted and I didn't really like people, was that with all the volunteers and all the staff, they just let me be where I was. And they kept showing up.
Yeah.
They never expected anything from me. They didn't want anything in return. They were just there to show God's love. And that was a game changer for me, because living in that lifestyle and experiencing what I experienced, that was not the case. It's a very transactional lifestyle that you live.
Yeah.
And this was not that. It was people wanting to be in your life if you allowed them to be. Wanting to just bring you a meal, wanting to give you a Bible, wanting to buy you a bathing suit. It was just the little things that people were just showing their love for somebody. And it kind of then changes your mindset to, I am likable. I can have friends. There are good people out here.
I can let people in. Yeah.
And they won't run for the hills.
Right.
When I let them in.
Right.
Or take advantage of that.
Yeah, people, they have to experience a benefit of the change before they fully will commit to the change.
Yeah. I had to. And I think when my son's father was buying in more to my change, and when I was getting to see my son more, then I think that's when I really barreled into it.
Sure.
Because then I was seeing that, yes,
you're seeing results.
I was seeing results, and it was something. And my first, going into it wasn't to get results. And that needed to be really important for me because I had tried to get clean many times just for this, just to see Luca, just to do this. And then when that didn't fall through, I would go right back to using again.
I see, yeah.
But there were times in the program when my visitation was refused, and I had that security to be able to go punch a dumpster if I needed to, come back and evaluate that in a house meeting, and then talk to people about it. I didn't go use because of that, and I wasn't going to give up because of that. So that was very important to me, but seeing them really see it in me helped me keep going.
Right. Wow. Does it get easier to ask for help?
No.
Why, let's talk a little about that, because I do want to spend some time on that. My observations, particularly with folks, you talked about, there was chaos in your life, but yet your aunt really helped provide a foundation for you. Vacation Bible school, going to church. I've been in church my entire life, but I am often kind of taken aback by people that believe in Christ and follow Him and have been in church, but something happens in their life. We just kind of walk around like everything's okay dandy. And everything's supposed to be okay. And if it's not okay, I think a stigma around that is that something's not right with or something's off with our relationship with God.
Right. And
I just think we got to start doing that, because that
fear of the judgment
keeps God in this very distant, aloof, unreached, unattainable place when He's right here. Yeah. He's never left. And he gets the mess. He knows how to handle it, but we just want to.
Yeah.
Don't
look at it.
Why do we do that?
Well, I think for me, and it takes a lot for me to admit this, but it's pride.
Yeah. It is.
It's pride, and it's, it's self-reliance. And that is one thing that it's some of these characteristic traits, like self-reliance. I hold very, I'm a self-reliant person. That means a lot to me to be self-reliant and independent. But at the same time, too much of that can be on the negative downswing, because I won't allow someone else to bless me because I want to do it on my own, or I'm fearful of the judgment that you may put on me because I'm struggling, what have it be, financially or, whatever. It's just that pride and that, our inability to be humble enough to allow someone to bless us.
Yeah.
And allow someone into our mess to speak truth into us.
Or admit that we might have to change something. God forbid we have to change something about our behavior.
Yeah. Oh, don't want to do that.
Well, as long as we are on this earth and have to deal with this flesh, we're going to have to
keep changing every day.
Yeah.
And it is hard. I mean, because things pop up. And then I feel too, especially with me, coming from what I've come from, and then I feel like if I struggle now, that it looks like to people that I'm back in active addiction.
I could see for sure how that could just weigh heavy on someone's mind that's in recovery.
Because my husband had said something to me the other night, and we both getting over this cold, and he's got the man flu, and we were in church, and he was not feeling good, and he's like, "Do you think people thought we were on drugs?" And I was like, "No, that thought never really crossed my mind, because I know I'm not. But why would you think that?" He's like, "Because I was just so tired, and I was I was blowing my nose. We were coughing. We didn't sleep good." And I was like, "No, I didn't think of that." And I was like, "Why did you think of that?" Yes. And then I start looking back, and I was like, "Well, why have I not asked for some help in some areas? Is it because I feel like people are going to think, oh, well, what are you doing now?
I see.
What are you doing now? Why are you struggling?"
Yeah.
You know, and it's just like light bulb comes off.
Wow.
That it's that we still have that, even though we're 8 to 10 years removed from it.
Yeah.
It's just another way that Satan attacks your mind just to keep you bound.
Yeah. It makes me think of those games like at Chuck E. Cheese. You know, you have the little hammer
Oh, the whack-a-mole.
and you pop the little things when they come up.
Yeah.
Because they do, like, those false beliefs and those negative thoughts that pop up. And you just,
Yeah.
but
You
like
just
you
wanna
said,
pow.
you have tools. We have to bring ourselves back to that place of clarity and reality and never forget that freedom that was experienced when we came into this self-realization. Like, yeah, I'm forgiven. It's covered in the blood of Jesus. His mercies are renewed every morning, and keep it moving.
Yeah.
Keep it moving.
Yeah, keep going.
Wow. Any words of encouragement that you have for anyone that is listening to this podcast that may be contemplating taking that first step to getting help, but also even people that are like in the trenches, they're in recovery, and like, I think a message that just because you go through a program, just because you complete a process, a program, hours, whatever it is, that
Life still hits you.
yeah, it does. So any thoughts or words of encouragement for some of our listeners?
I would say for those contemplating, so it's probably going to be two separate.
Yeah.
It's two separate,
Yeah.
you know, ways of looking at it. But for contemplating, I would say even if you have an inkling that you need help, call somebody. You know, there's tons of resources, and Safe Harbor has a whole list of different resources.
Right.
If you're not into, you know, Christ-based or whatever, because sometimes, you know, for me, even though I grew up in church, I was like, I don't know, but I'll try it. Because that's just where I was at, you know, but you have to be at that point. But no matter what, you know, just keep trying. Even if you try and you call and a bed is full and you mess up that night, keep trying again.
Yeah.
Like, don't let the mess ups take you away from your blessing to yourself. You know, a lot of times we can do that, myself included. Like, I will try, don't work out. Oh, I just went back and did this. Oh, well, like, it's all for nothing now, you know, like the whole sky is falling. And then I would say, you know, for people in recovery, completing a program, going through a program, you know, no matter what, like, I had this, I was pretty aware that life was going to hit me, but I still had this kind of bubble-esque view of I'm going to be protected forever
Yeah.
kind of feel. And that just isn't really the case, in the sense that life is going to touch you no matter where you're at. I mean, it touches you in the program. You have a little bit more fallback. But it's going to touch you no matter where you go. And, like, life has not stopped from hitting me since getting out. And through that, I have, you know, we all make mistakes. We all do some things great. I have let my social network go away. And I have realized recently that that needs to boost back up, because the support is everything. If you do not have a core group of people, and it doesn't have to be 15, 20. It can be 2 or 3, you know, but it just has to be people that can speak life into you and that you can go to when you need advice or, you know, anything.
Right.
So to have that is what's going to make life's trials even better, you know, and connecting more. Of course, I'm going to say church, you know, connecting more in your church group, like serving, getting into a group, doing these things, like all these things that I had fallen out of because I got into the comfortability of life, you know, of me doing my own thing because I didn't have someone telling me what to do. So then things happen. And COVID really screwed it up for all of us.
Yeah.
You know,
It's
because
challenging, yeah.
it was challenging, and I had...
It isolated everybody.
It did.
Yeah.
And it isolated me a lot because I just had my child in February of that year. March, it hit. April, everything's closed. And, you know, for the first year and a half of his life, we stayed in the house because I didn't want him to get sick. And so that really started the whole down spiral of the social connections and the outreach and all those things. And so now, coming out of that, realizing that how important that really is.
That connection and community. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I hear you say, have grace for yourself.
Yes.
Families, extend grace to yourself, but also remember to extend grace for your person, your loved one that's going through this process, because it's up, down, all around.
It is.
And but also for people that are in recovery and that are fighting that fight, it will continue to extend grace to yourself and other people, but don't forget that connection in your community and having people in your life that will help hold you accountable, and speak truth to you in love. That I couldn't agree more. I think those are very, very important for all people.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not just people that are in recovery from substance use. All people.
Life hits everybody.
It sure does. And we need each other. We need to pray for each other. We need to be encouraging. We need to serving. Speaking of serving, now, you are in a position where you are helping make that possible for so many people, because you're that point of contact for Safe Harbor, for people to serve and volunteer. And who better to place people?
Yeah.
You know all about
I know
the
all the
programs.
programs.
You've participated in all.
All but the passage.
All but the passage. And I think you have been able to increase, one, and so much self-awareness that brings wisdom, and insightfulness, but also so much empathy that you have, not just for people in recovery, but for all people that have a desire to serve, because you know the significance of it. So I'm so proud of you, Chasticle, and I'm so grateful that God has allowed you to have this opportunity to join Safe Harbor in a new way as a staff person. And so thank you so much for coming on the Shining the Light podcast. We're going to continue to shine the light. And so give Chasta a call and learn more about some of the exciting volunteer opportunities at Safe Harbor. Thank you so much for listening. Be sure to give us a great rating and share our podcast with those, anyone and all that you know that would benefit from hearing these awesome stories from ladies like Chasta. So thanks so much.
Thank you.